Welcome back to another session of Positive Solutions for Families. This is session 5, Teach Me What to Do. And today's focus will be on teaching new skills to our children. I am Karen Anthony again, Early Childhood Mental Health Consultant at Oakland Schools.
And I'm Christine Hodge again, Associate Coordinator of the Great Start Collaborative and Oakland Schools. I am so excited about today's session because one of the things that's really good about it is we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty now. We're getting into some of that challenging behavior and some tips to do that. So for those of you that have stuck with us for the last 4 sessions, now we're getting into the nitty gritty. Don't you think, Karen?
Into the good stuff, I think. Yeah, this is where we start to get real specific about those challenging behaviors.
Yeah, like giving you some really good ideas. So, okay, so what we're doing today, we've got some interesting topics to cover and more resources as always and ideas to share with you. So, we're going to learn how to identify the best time for teaching social emotional skills. I would say for teaching anything, kind of identifying the best time, right? We're going to identify some feeling words and ways to teach those emotions, how to identify those emotions, use of calming strategies and self-regulation skills, learn about teaching problem-solving skills. So this might seem like a lot of things, but today we hope that you leave kind of with a plan moving forward about what you can do for at least 1 or 2 things that you know is something that you want to work on. So maybe you can try a few of those things and see how they work for you and your child. So, and of course we start at the beginning with going over our apply it and try it and never forgetting those affirmations, right?
Absolutely. Definitely. So when we think back to our last session and we want to think about one of the things that we worked on or that we tried to get you to try it at home were really around routines and transitions. And so it really was thinking about things like, a visual schedule. Have you thought about creating one, putting one up? Have you actually created one yourself? We'd love to see it if you've done something. We'd love you to snap some photos and send them to us so that we can share with others. We talked about transition strategies like the use of a timer or those first and then boards. And so what we'd like to, again, hear back from you is how did you feel about these kinds of strategies? What worked? What didn't work? How did your child respond to it? And what were the challenges that you had with this? I think it's really important, like I said, for us to get that feedback so we know, what can we tweak or change in our discussions with parents so that we can make sure that it's reality and it works for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, as you've heard us describe throughout these past few weeks or few sessions, we will tell you stories that other parents have told us. So if you have a story that you want to share with us, it can be a learning experience for all groups. It's only helpful if you hear it from someone else too. So.
True. The realities, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking too about yourself as an adult, really it's important again to kind of think of what is that affirmation that you have for yourself. I mean, here we are at session 5. If you have come to all of these sessions, you can say to yourself, I have done it. I have come to 5 full sessions. These are the things we want to really make sure that you're kind of patting yourself on the back for because this is not easy work. And we want to make sure that you're getting the support that you need and you're getting it to yourself. Parenting is hard work.
Parenting is hard. Yeah, absolutely. So again, showing you that family handbook and that first activity and writing that affirmation down. Give yourself a gold star because you deserve it. So.
Interestingly, this is kind of an offshoot little story, but I was walking into the store today and I saw this young boy, couldn't have been more than, 6, 7, and he had a medal around his neck. And all I could think of when I saw it was he must have won something over the weekend, maybe in the last few weeks. It was something that his team or whatever that he was on, but he was so proud that he was wearing his medal to the grocery store. And it made me think, if every parent could wear their medals around their neck
right
as they walk to the grocery store, saying, I can do this. I am a good parent.
I got my kids to school on time this morning. Yes. I deserve a medal. Yeah, absolutely. I totally hear you. Okay, so we're going to take just a minute, and I feel pretty strongly about this one, about when to teach specifically social emotional skills, but I would argue almost to teach anything because there are times where your brain can learn, and there are times where your brain can't learn. And when you're in the crisis of a moment, that's not the time where your brain's going to be able to learn. So just a quick little visual. This is when we teach. So, when a child is having a problem behavior that you see regularly, a child is arguing with a sibling or, not getting along with you or their dad or their mom or whoever it might be, you need to find a time to practice skills when they are not escalated, when they're not upset, when things are calm and they're not even thinking about it. So if you look at this slide, in these two spots right here, practice after it's all over, hours and hours later, or even the next morning, and practice well before it happens. As your child starts to escalate, if they start to get upset, that's when you want to prompt them for what to do. But you don't want to teach in this red section because it's not a great time for learning. Even for yourself as an adult, if you're upset about something, if someone has just cut you off in traffic or caused an issue, or let's say you're arguing with your partner and they say something to you like, I think you're just being over emotional right now. Or they say something that it's going to make you upset when ordinarily it may not make you upset if you weren't being emotional right then. If you weren't being upset, you might be able to take that in the vein that your partner was trying to say it. But it's not a time to teach when your emotions are high. So like just to give you a quick little example, let me see if I can think of something. So if two children are arguing over a toy and they both want the toy, and one child had it first and their older sister went to grab it from them, and you say, no, no, no. And that child starts getting upset, and you don't want to say right now, okay, I'm going to teach you how to breathe. You want to teach them how to breathe. It's not the time. You want to teach them how to breathe when they're both just playing calmly. And you say, let's do some practice breaths. We're going to do that in a minute. But we just want to remind you, and we'll remind you a couple more slides. We'll say, remember, this is at that green section that you're teaching this, not at that elevated red section.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of the kids that I've seen having some pretty big temper tantrums. And teachers are trying to get them to say, okay, take some deep breaths, or, what are your options, what are your choices? And their brains are shut down in that tantrum moment. So they're not going to learn anything new with that.
Right. But if they've already been taught how to take those deep breaths, if they've been taught it for, throughout the whole time, then when okay, take a deep breath, they know exactly what to do and they don't have to think. It's just automatic, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so emotional literacy. We're just going to talk for a quick minute about this and then we're going to dig in a little bit deeper. But young children, just because they're young, doesn't mean that they don't have big emotions. They have just as big emotions as you or I or their older brother or sister do. Some cases, even bigger emotions because things are a big deal when you're 3 or 4 or 5. So one of the things that we can do to help children manage their feelings is to help them identify those feelings. So children learn emotions like scared, angry, frustrated, sad, dejected, just like anything else. Just like they learn their ABCs or their colors or their numbers, we need to teach them those words and explain what they're all about. And Karen's going to dig into that for us.
So I think it's important to start with where children are, right? So what emotion words does your child know, and what emotion words does your child need to know? And so it's one of the things that's important is to think about that emotions are not good or bad. Emotions are emotions, and we all have feelings, emotions. Our actions might be not so great, our actions might be good or bad, but our feelings are all okay to have. So that's an important message that we can be giving young children as they're feeling things. And so, so it's important for us to make sure that we're giving them the message that all feelings are okay. Even things like feeling, bored. Bored is a hard one, right? It's not okay to feel bored. Yeah, it certainly is okay to feel bored. It's not okay to bug your brother because you're bored. So that's the difference in how we can start to explain the difference between the words and the understanding what the words mean, and then our behaviors being something separate. So the best thing that we can do for young children is give them the names of those feelings, and then they can begin to understand what that really means. So we labeled it for them. So as we go through it, we also have to remember that feelings change. At one moment, I might be feeling sad, and then, after a little bit, I can kind of come out of it, and I'm feeling okay again. Feelings change. They don't have to be the same all the time. And, it's one of those things, too, where, you might wake up grumpy, but you don't have to stay grumpy all day. So it's kind of understanding that our feelings do change throughout the day. And one of the things that we can do as parents or as adults with children is you talk about and label your own emotions throughout the day. And kids will pick up on some of that. Some kids will absorb that and take it and run with it. Other kids, you need to really walk them through exactly what that looks like. So you need to say to them, you look surprised. Your mouth is open and your eyes are wide. What happened? What surprised you? Other kids will watch you see being surprised, and you might say, that surprised me, and they can pick up on it and run with it. So you kind of have to know your own kids, and you have to know what your child picks up on kind of naturally. But I find that it can't hurt any child to go through the motions of actually labeling them for a while, especially when they're very young. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, just like teaching rules and schedules, feeling faces are ways that, visual ways that we can teach. So, here's an example, and the slide previously too was an example with, the words behind, underneath, obviously young children can't read, so they're not really reading the words, but they can certainly see these faces, and they can pick out what's going on in these faces. So being able to have this as a way to teach your children emotions is a really, actually very healthy kind of way to do it. You can do it in lots of different ways. Here they have other children's faces. I like to suggest to parents, take some pictures of your own kids and throw those up on the wall or on a wheel like this, where you've got their faces so they can connect what their face looks like. I've also said you can actually get a mirror and have your child look in the mirror with different facial expressions so that they can see what their face looks like. They can see your face, but they can't see their own unless they're looking in the mirror. So then you might label it from there. Mirror, mirror, what do I see? And then look at the emotion on their face. Ooh, let's see a grumpy face. Or let's see a smiling, happy face. So being able to have those kinds of, they're little games, but they're ways that you can actually demonstrate to your child what that can look like.
Yeah, and if you want to just start with this feelings wheel along with that poster is on the website where you can print it out yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can start out with this.
It's already there. There's no reason why you can. But again, like I said, I prefer for families if you can grab your phone. You don't even have to download them and print them off. Heck, you can just show your kid on your own phone. This is what your face looks like. Sometimes that's a fun way to do it.
It is, absolutely. This is a nice way to start it, though, because it gives kids an idea of what does excited mean. Because, sometimes they don't even know what that is. So this gives them like an initial kind of starting point. And it also gives you as a parent or as a caregiver an idea about what emotions do I even look for? Because as we said at the beginning, it's beyond happy, mad, and sad. It's, we want to do a little bit more than that. So that's just kind of a way to go about it. So.
And we've used this in different ways with different families and with different children because, again, people pick up on this the different pieces in different ways. But doing like an emotional check-in, How are you feeling? I've seen teachers in preschool do this with kids as they're entering the classroom in the beginning of the day. How are you feeling this morning? And kids can identify how they're feeling. So doing that little check-in, you could do it with your family. You could do it like after school each day, and everyone go around. How are you feeling today? How was your day? It's just, again, a good way to be able to use the idea of talking about feelings and labeling our feelings and actually having stories that go along with that. So there are plenty of these resources that we have available to you that I think can make a really big difference. And you could use it as a poster. You could use it as a wheel like they show here. You could actually take the poster and cut it up and make little cards. There's lots of different ways you could use it, but it's something that if you really do use it in a way that you are doing it often, because that's how kids are going to absorb the information and retain it, is that you need to practice it.
Yeah, and remember that piece, practicing it when no one's elevated about anything. Practice this when you are driving in the car and it's completely calm and no one's having an argument or a discussion. This is one of those things that you want to make sure that that's when you go through to do it.
That's when you're teaching it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And another really great way to teach kids is through the use of books. And it doesn't have to be a book about emotions. It can be pretty much any book, because the book will show emotions. So typically it's a book that's more fiction and not as much nonfiction. But there are characters in books, and you can, point out the facial expression in the book and say, oh my goodness, that character looks really scared. And you might ask, what makes you scared? Can you show me what your scared face looks like? So you're actually using a book to have a discussion with kids and expand upon having the talk about feelings, but now you're doing it through a character, or you're doing it through something else that's going on in the book. You can also do it through songs, if you know some good songs that you sing that might be helpful. And actually, oftentimes I'll hand children books, and they'll say to me, read the book, and I'll say, why don't you read it to me? And I'll hand them the book, and kids will actually go through, and just based on the characters' pictures and what they see in the book, they can create their own story. It doesn't have to be the story that's actually in the book. But they can look at the facial expressions of the characters, and they can make up their own story. And that gives you a lot of information about what your child does understand about facial expressions and what they see in front of them.
Yeah, it's also great for their verbal ability to be able to kind of come up with the story around what's going on. I mean, it's a great listening skill. I always like to bring up at this point, and Karen and I might have already talked about using books to show emotions in these sessions, but we can't say it enough. I always like to bring up the Winnie the Pooh characters, all of the characters in the 100-Acre Wood, mainly because I'm not a fan of, promoting characters that are, that are a part of everywhere, with the exception of emotions and this 100-Acre Wood gang, because their emotions are so on the surface. Piglet is anxious. He's nervous all the time, right? I mean, he's got a lot of anxiety. And if you are in a family where grandma has anxiety, or dad has anxiety, or older siblings have anxiety, that's an expression that they should know, that a young child should know. What does it mean to be anxious? Because that's one of those things that can really help to be able to understand that there's some deeper feelings that sometimes people have. Same thing is true of almost every character in the 100-Acre Wood, including Eeyore, who may be a little depressed. He may be like a little, I'm not sure. I'm not a therapist, but so I won't clinically define him as being depressed, but he certainly has a lot of depressive tendencies. And so if you do have, grandpa is depressed sometimes, maybe it's a good thing to be able to discuss it. And everybody still loves Eeyore. Eeyore's still welcome. It's okay. He's a little gloomy. And you can use words like that too. You can use gloomy, it's more than sad. It's different than sad sometimes. It's, yeah,
And again, the more words that you use and introduce children to, the better it is for them.
absolutely.
So the first apply it and try it is really, the idea of creating a plan to try and teach emotions. It's really for you to think about what works for your family, what works for your child or children, and coming up with your own plan. So you might want to come up with a list of 2 or 3 emotion words, and then write down some ideas of how you're going to actually teach these words and how you're going to bring them up at different times in a variety of different ways. And then really keep track of how did your child respond and how did they feel about it. And recognize, too, that when children typically start something new, it isn't something that you do once and if they're bored with it, that you just leave it and say they didn't like it. Sometimes you have to do it a few times before they really get the hang of what's happening. So don't feel like if initially they didn't respond the way you expected, you might have to just keep at it for a little while, and then you'll see them kind of calm down.
Okay, so an important skill to teach children is how to manage their strong emotions. So Karen just went through a whole bunch of different ways to label those emotions and to be able to kind of teach them to your child. But labeling them is like the first step. And then, it's recognizing, labeling them, and then figuring out how to kind of control them, for lack of a better word. One of the things that is really important is that if a child has a word for it, then they're already on their way to managing it. One of my colleagues talks about a story that when her son was young and he couldn't tie his shoes and he really, really wanted to, he used to pick up his shoe and throw it because he'd say, "I'm so mad, I can't tie my shoe." And he'd throw his shoe. And she went up to him at one point and said, "You're not mad, you're frustrated. Frustrated means when you can't do something that you really want to do, it's frustrating you." And simply by giving him that word, he was able to control not throwing that shoe anymore. He still would get frustrated. And she does an adorable imitation of him saying that he was frustrated in trying to get his shoe tied. But at least it gave him an idea to be able to start that process. So having the label is the first step to kind of recognizing your feelings, having the label of what it is, and then beginning to calm down. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's a simple little thing, but it does help. Did you want to add to that, Karen?
I was just going to say it would be nice if a lot of adults had these skills as well. I think of, how often I see stories in the news that just are a shame that I think that a lot of adults have not learned ways to label and control their own emotions. And that's what gets them into trouble. So it really is something that's a great thing to be able to do is to label it, understand your emotion, and then to figure out what to do with it next.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And some people in the news might benefit from the turtle technique. So I'm going to share this turtle technique with you all. And again, there is a whole book to it that is on the website right here. It takes you through all of these pieces, but this is just a little shortened version of it. And this strategy was originally developed to teach adults in like an anger management kind of class, which I think is kind of funny. But I also think if it worked, right? So the basic steps of the turtle technique are recognize your own feelings. That's step 1. Stop your body. This is huge. Before a young child bites or slaps or hits or kicks, stop your body. Step 3 is to tuck inside your shell and take 3 deep breaths. And step 4 is to come out when you are calm and can think of a solution. Again, you want to help your child practice these steps at a time when they're not agitated, when they're not irritated, when they're, things are going hunky-dory and fine. You just kind of want to give them those 4 little pieces. Recognize that you're feeling upset, stop your body, tuck inside, and then come out when you can think of a solution. Anything you want to add to that, Karen?
I think the only thing I would add is that whole last piece of come out when it's time to think of a solution. They don't have to have the solution right away. And that's what adults are nearby for, is to help them come up with a solution. Because oftentimes young children don't have a solution of their own and need that adult support. So as you're going through this with your child, you need to be nearby. You don't need to necessarily be on top of them making them do it, but you do need to be nearby so that when they get to that step number 4, you're there to help them come up with a solution.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think it's almost, I think it almost should be come out when you are calm and ready to think of a solution. So it's not, you don't have the solution yet. It's really more ready to think of a solution, like you're ready to problem solve.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So practice, practice, practice. Encourage your child to tuck in like a turtle, celebrate mini successes, even no matter how many they are. But you want to start by teaching that technique step by step, recognizing your feeling. You're feeling anxious, or you're feeling disappointed because your friend didn't come over like they were supposed to, or whatever it might be. You want to help them recognize the feeling and then take those next steps straight through. So they're all set. One of the ways to be able to work on being able to do those thinking of the solutions is when you out loud are kind of problem solving yourself. So if there's something that's going on in the day that you have to figure out, kind of just problem solving out loud. Well, we were going to go over to Grandma's because I had something that I wanted to take over to her, but I can't go to Grandma's now because Grandpa's sick and she doesn't want us to come over. So now I can't get that from Grandma. What should we do next? You just want to give them all those little pieces. And as Karen said earlier, you also want to admit when you're frustrated, when you're sad, when you're mad, when you're upset. All of those pieces are going to help for your child to be able to do that too.
Children are sponges. They will copy so much of what we do. So if we're modeling good kinds of techniques in calming ourselves, they will pick up and use those same kinds of techniques.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing about children being sponges is that absolutely they will pick up everything, but we can also pick up from them. And the way that children and families interact, that's where the learning takes place. So it has to be reciprocal in both ways, right? So that's where learning happens. That's the sweet spot.
So another great technique to help your child kind of calm themselves and calm their bodies is what's called belly breathing. And there's a lot of research around belly breathing right now. We do know that the mind-body connection there is such a connection. And so taking that deep breath and actually bringing oxygen into your body and bringing oxygen into your brain can really help calm your body down. So what we really do try to get kids to do, and try to get adults, anybody can do it, is really just take some great big deep breaths, and it will reduce your heart rate and it will trigger a relaxation response. So what you see here in this picture is some things that we do with little kids to help them understand that when we take a big deep breath, we smell the flower, so we're breathing in through our nose. And then we blow the pinwheel, so we blow out through our mouth. I typically I don't usually do a pinwheel. I usually say blow out the candles. Most kids can understand that because they've had a birthday and they've blown out the candles. So, but you can do any of these kinds of things. They're really good techniques to just learn to kind of take that big deep breath in, and then when you let it all out, and you can do that, usually I say 3 times. And that, it really does physically calm your body down.
It absolutely does. I'm not a fan of enclosed spaces, never have been. And my daughter lives in New York City, And she lives in one of those apartment buildings on the fifth floor where it is the elevator that you walk in. That's the old fashioned elevator with the door that opens like a door, and it's tiny. And so I typically walk up. It's like a fifth floor walk up for me. But yeah, it's not pleasant. But she had surgery not too long ago, and I had to go to New York and take care of her. And when we were coming home from the surgery, on the day of her surgery, she said, "Mom, I have to take the elevator." And I said, "Okay." So, and I didn't want to leave her alone because she had just had surgery. So I went into the elevator with her, and we call them yoga breaths at my house. It's the exact same thing. I did yoga breaths the entire time that we were in, and she was much more worried about me than I was about her. She was like, "Are you going to be okay?" I'm like, "I'm not sure. I'm not comfortable with those kind of things, but it does help." I was able to get into the elevator and let the door close behind me because I knew that I could do that. So that's a silly little example, but it wasn't silly to me. It might be silly to you hearing it.
I mean, when I think of it again, this is not just a technique for kids. Anyone who needs it needs to kind of have that moment to calm your body and your brain down. And it works. Again, there's a lot of research around it. So we have this really great video. There's a classroom that I visited, and this little gal had learned this from her mother at home. She brought it to the classroom and taught other kids in the class how to do this.
Hey! Zariah, what are you doing? What is that?
Remember?
Are you taking a deep, deep breath to calm your body? Can you show me that again? Oh, thank you.
So even our littlest of people can do this. And like I said, she went on to teach other kids in the class how to do it. I love that. I love that idea.
I love it too. I mean, it's just such a beautiful example. I love how even just everything about her is like her whole body moves in and out with them. It's a beautiful example. And it's obvious that she's been taught it again at those low points when she's not upset, those green arrows, and then she's able to pull it up. I would guess, not knowing this little girl and what's going on, but I would guess that this is at one of those elevated times. Somebody took something she wanted. Someone is playing, not with her, but with someone else. Something's going on, and she's getting to that elevated, that yellow point of the hill. And she's, choosing a time to be like, okay, I got to calm myself down because she's been taught that. It's amazing.
So recognizing too that, we don't want to just focus on the anger and the frustration and the awful times. We want to think of some other pieces that really are what things that happen in the lives of children every day. And one of the things that I think is important, I like to think about when kids are disappointed. And again, it's not just kids, it can be anybody when they're feeling disappointed. That children, it's not necessarily that they're mad about something, but you really think about the situation as a whole. If you're planning on going outside to the playground and you go running for your favorite swing and somebody else has taken it, that can make you frustrated. It can make you really disappointed that you wanted that swing and you didn't get the swing that you wanted. So then what do? When you feel disappointed, sometimes we can take a deep breath. Sometimes but you have to recognize, and kids need to be helped along to figure out, what is this that I'm feeling right now? Why do I feel this way? And so you can say things like, to a child, like, maybe we want to tuck inside and just take a minute and think about this. What do we want to do? So it really is the idea that we can model this, we can teach it. There's so many pieces of really thinking about labeling our emotions and then teaching what do we do with these big emotions that we have.
Yeah, I said it earlier when we were talking about one of the other sessions in the car. I used to do these problem solving questions in the car with my kids a lot of times. So if it was a Thursday and they both had a TV show that they wanted to watch in their half hour of TV show viewing, and I knew it was going to be an argument on Thursday come 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whenever it was, I would bring it up beforehand and I would say, tonight's Thursday. What are we going to do? You're going to want to watch this and you're going to want to watch this. What problems how can we problem solve this now so that it's not an issue, right? So if you can think it through beforehand. So it might not be these two examples for your house. It might be something entirely different. But whatever it is in your house that you want to fix, or your classroom, or whatever it might be that you want to adjust, this is the way to go, maybe a way to go about it. Another thing that can help is having a calm down area, an area where a child can just chill out. I used to call it a chill out space in my classroom, and I had a little picture of like a polar bear on a ice hill, and it was just if you just need to chill out, this might be a space for you to be able to do it. I had a beanbag there. It's different from a timeout. So it's not, I'm going to put you here because you're not listening. This is more like you just need in yourself to just chill out. You need to take a break from whatever is going on. So let's choose a calm down area. It can be very, very helpful. This is an article about it that is also on the website that you can print out for yourself that just really talks about the importance and like the research that goes behind having this area to do this. But if you have a spot in your home, it doesn't have to be large. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to live in a 3,000 square foot home to have a little space for a little one to take a break. By the way, using a calm down space does not have to only be for the children in your house. If you need to use a calm down space, you can use it as well. You can say, I just need to have a minute to calm down because I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed or anxious. We all feel that way at times, and it's really okay. And setting that example, modeling that for your child is only going to be helpful. The more that you can model and use calming strategies that help with this self-regulation piece, the more likely your child will be able to use those strategies when they are upset. So that little girl that Karen just showed us that was doing that breathing, I'm willing to bet that her mother does that too. I don't know that for a fact. Again, don't know this little girl, but I'm willing to bet that at the very least she's done it as an example because that little girl's too good at it to not have a really strong model of that piece. So there's also a poster on the website too that really focuses on helping us calm down. So you can take deep breaths. I can count. I can go for a walk. I can take a drink. I can take a break. I can listen to music. Now, not all of these might be possible for your house. So if you have a 2-year-old, they're probably not going to go for a walk, at least outside. So maybe that's go for a walk around the kitchen or go for, maybe it's inside your home. Maybe they can walk up and down your stairs if you have stairs in your home. So, not every piece might be able to be used, but maybe you can. You can cover up whatever pieces you don't want to use. This is just an example of one. This doesn't have to be exactly what you use. Again, you can cut this poster up and put 2 or 3 of them. However you want to make it work for your house is however you can make it work for your house. The idea behind this, though, is giving them a visual clue about what you can do to help calm down.
One of the things that's important, I think, about a calm down area is that it's really supposed to be, or it's intended to be like a one-person area. It's not intended to be a place that kids go hang out and play in all day. It's more of an escape kind of place. And again, it's not meant to be where, because again, I've worked with teachers on having this in classrooms and tried to make it really clear that, if there's 3 people in there and one of them really needs to use it to calm down, it's not going to help if there's 3 people in there. So they need it to be kind of an alone space. And when you teach it to children, when you teach children how to use the space, they really get good at it. They really understand what it's meant to be for and how to use it. And it works. Works.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that it does need to be a one-person space. Because the last thing that someone needs in a chill out area is someone that's irritating them. So if brother is irritating them, and they want to have their chill out space, that's not that might be the calming down that they're trying to get away from, is they might need to be calming down on their own. So excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back, thinking back to those turtle technique steps that we read through. The last step, and Karen touched on this a little bit, is being able to problem solve and think of solutions. We kind of went through this a little bit more, but I want to just express one more time that problem solving for a young child may be hitting or shouting or scratching, because as we talked about 3 sessions, I think ago, that if the consequences, they get the toy, then that behavior worked. So if they scratch to get a toy, then the consequences that they got the toy and the behavior worked, right? So this problem solving step needs to really be practiced. And it needs to be practiced in a positive way so that even very young children can be taught more productive ways of being able to get their desired goal, right? Oftentimes we say to children, use your words, but we don't give them the words to use. And when a child's upset and you say, use your words, it's like a partner saying to you, I think you're being over emotional. It doesn't work. So, so what you want to really say is, say, I want the plane when you're done. You want to give them the exact words. I say the plane because that little guy looks like someone broke his plane. So instead of his brother breaking his plane, you say to them, say, I want the plane when you're done. When you're finished, I want the plane. And that, you give them the exact words to do it. Problem solving needs to be taught. It needs to be taught. Anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So again, kind of going back to in the Tucker the turtle technique is kind of the same idea that we kind of have a process in problem solving. And that process really is moving through the steps. And so first is, what is the problem? So I always say when you're working with especially more than one child, if you're one child and he broke his plane just playing with it, that's one situation. But if there's more than one child that you're talking to, you really need to hear the problem from both kids. So you need to let them each have their say. And you need to be neutral. So you don't want to take one side over another. You just listen to what they both have to say. So defining what the problem is. And then as a team or as a group, you're going to really think of all the different possible solutions. And when I say that, I typically will say to kids, I will take anything that they have to say. And some of the things that kids say are crazy. Okay, how am I going to fix my plane? I don't know. I'm going to put it in a rocket and shoot it to the moon, and someone there is going to fix it. Well, I guess that's one idea. And so the idea is that you're not telling them that it won't work. You're just saying, let's just get every idea out there. And then once we've got that, we can start problem solving and thinking about, well, what would happen if you tried that? Or boy, what if you sent it to the moon and it never came back? That would be kind of scary or sad. So maybe we don't want to think about that. Let's try some of the other solutions first. So you have to think about, how would everyone feel? Would it be safe to do these things? So you kind of walk through these processes and you end up giving it a try and seeing what works and what doesn't. And as the adult, you need to be nearby. You need to be nearby to see the conclusion of what's happened, so that if it doesn't work itself out and it doesn't solve the problem, you can step back in and start the process again. So that's kind of the process that we can think about, as we start to. There's lots of different examples we can give that have really easy, simple solutions. I like to think of those solutions that are not so easy. We have one robot toy and 2 kids want it. There's not an easy solution for that until we start coming up with ideas. And it might be that we use a timer. Somebody gets it for 5 minutes and somebody else gets it for 5 minutes. It might be that somebody gets it first and when they're done, the next person gets it. It might be that nobody gets to use it. But we have to generate all those ideas and then kind of put them together to figure out how we're going to solve the problem. So it's really important that you can use kind of this whole idea at home with your children and your families at home. And you can practice using kind of scenario cards. So again, being able to look at this, I can be a problem solver at home. Somebody took something from you. I'm lonely and I want to be somebody to play with me. I want to play, but I want to play by myself. That happens sometimes too. I'm frustrated that something didn't work out. So you can use these to say, kind of like you were talking about, Christine, like what you would do with your girls and really coming up with things before the problem happens. So being able to say to kids, well, what do you think we could do if you both want to play with it? What are we going to do? How are we going to solve this problem before it even becomes a problem? So you're kind of preemptively thinking about and practicing these things so that when the event actually happens, you have some solutions already in hand.
So once that problem is identified, once the situation, then it's really that think of solutions section, which Karen, you just went over with us a little bit. I'm going to dig a tiny bit deeper into this area because there's also solutions cards that come, again, the problem solving cards are there and then solution cards are there as well. So you can go ahead and have those solutions cards that might give you some solutions for a starting point to be able to start those pieces. Because that's the tricky part, is that you don't always know what the starting point might be. And then steps 3 and 4 are, trying out the solution. So what would happen? Like what's going to be, would it be safe? And this is a conversation that you really want to have with your child or children, because how would everyone feel about this? Because as Karen was talking about this and she was saying that kids are going to come up with a solution, both kids are going to say, I want it first, but I want it first. And how is everyone going to feel about that? Not everyone can have it first. So what can we do? How is that going to make everyone feel? So those kind of parts are important to add in that. Usually somebody says, okay, I'll get it last. And it usually ends up working out, but not always. So that might be something that has to be talked through. And the would it be safe option is always a piece of it.
Yes. And that's hard. That's hard, especially when you've got more than one kid and you've got, that sibling piece going on.
Absolutely.
So a great way to teach your child problem solving is to teach those skills, again, before you're actually facing the problem. So you should really start to think about and anticipate situations that might present a problem. Think about it ahead of time. So, for example, if you know that your child always gets upset if there's someone playing with their favorite toy at school, you could say to your child, sometimes when you go to preschool, there's another kid playing with your favorite toy, and when you get upset. What could you do if that happens today? What could you do? How are you going to survive this if someone's playing with that favorite toy? So let's think of some solutions. So you're talking about this before the child even sets foot in the classroom. So then you want to remind them again before they even go, before you're actually letting them go into the classroom. But again, you really need to think about the things ahead of time. As much as you can really foresee the problems before they happen, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to guide that situation to be safe and to have a solution at the end that works for everyone, ideally. So it's always hard.
Absolutely.
So apply it, try it. So select your anger management and calming or problem solving. So what I really want you to do right now is to think about, with this next apply it, try it. I want you to start thinking about those problem solving steps for 3 and 4. What would you do? What happened if I tried my solution, right? So you want to be able to use these kinds of cards that we've got here and really help walk your kiddo through. Here are some thoughts and ideas. Here we have all this material that's here for you that you can be using, that you can work on and use with your child, which is so important. So when you're really working on this, you want to be able to write down what it is that you want to teach your child. You really want to think about this ahead of time. What do you want to teach? And then you're going to read some stories about it. You could actually create your own scripted story about it. You can practice talking about problems and using the scenario cards. You could have a few of the solutions, hang them up in your house someplace where people can see them. But there's a lot of really great things that you can be doing that are really, again, proactively trying to foresee some of these problems that can occur. So we're already here at the end for this time. So I want to kind of go back and review again, thinking about what are the things that we want you to work on between now and the next session is to work on the teaching your child the new emotion words. So that activity 2 in your handbook. And it's really thinking about what are those emotion words that you want to focus on and that you're going to work on repeating and using in different scenarios. And then the activity 3 is the calm down strategies or problem solving strategies. So you can do either or. You can do them both if you want. But the idea is we want to really think about having those ideas for, I want to teach my child how to calm down. I want to teach my child how to problem solve. And think of very specific situations that you can use these. And then practice it. It's going to take practice.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, it might not be the first time that you try it that they might get it, and that's okay. Absolutely. So thanks. Congratulations. You made it through session 5.
Woohoo!
Woohoo. All right. See
Session 6 and session 7.
you next time.